Well, today's the day. We're finally getting the RX-8 into the new garage.
Seriously, I just had it.
So the Port 8's been sitting for like 2 years and it's got flat tires and it doesn't run. So I've enlisted my son and his friend to give me a hand pushing it into the garage. And that's gonna be our goal for today, is just getting the thing in here and taking a better look at what's going on. Well, we got it into the garage. Special thanks to Espen, Zach, and Logan for giving me a hand pushing it in. There's no way I would have been able to do that on my own. So thanks guys, much appreciated. Yeah, no way I'd have been able to do that on my own. First thing is first, I have a nail in there. So I'm gonna throw a quick plug in that, fill it back up so that I can at least get a floor jack under this thing, because it should be sitting on 18s and it's sitting on 17s, which makes it difficult to get a jack under it or do anything else. So we're gonna fix that tire first thing. These tires are obviously shot completely. They're baloney skins on the outside. So I'm not planning on using these. I just need this thing to hold enough air. I'm never gonna use these tires on the street or anything. So I'm just gonna throw a tire worm in this just so that it holds some air, and I can actually have it rolled around and not have to fill up the tire every time I need to do it. First things first, we're gonna remove the nail or whatever the hell's in here. Well, hopefully that'll do the trick. Tiny little nail. So this thing has been sitting for a really long time. It is absolutely filthy. It's pretty much a barn find at this point. It's sitting on Hyundai wheels, has no battery. I have no idea what condition the engine is in. My assumption is that the coolant seals failed and lost compression, and coolant got into the combustion chamber. I have no idea. So the first thing I'm gonna do is pop the hood, see if I can pull the spark plugs, and maybe turn the engine over and see if any coolant comes out of the combustion chamber through the spark plug holes. I haven't even looked in the inside of the car or anything like that, so why don't we take a quick closer look at what's going on with this car. All in all, the car's not in terrible shape for a 20-year-old car. It has a couple dings and dents and some love touches here and there. It's a filthy mess, so I don't know what the paint looks like underneath just yet. We've got a little bit of a mishap that happened right here. We're missing some plastic surround for the exhaust, and yeah, it's a filthy mess. Really needs cleaned up. Why don't we take a closer look at what's going on inside? So the interior could use a little TLC. We've got some staining on the seats, a little bit of cracked plastics on the dash. You know, nothing a good vacuum cleaning out would probably help. Some missing plastics here and there. I wonder if there are any other goodies that are left behind by my buddy for me. Bath and Body Works, free gift with any purchase. Sweet. Oh man, expired in 2020. Bummer. What else we have going on in here? Ooh, a stick. Perfect. Oh man, turning a profit already. Check that out. Quarter's going straight to the motor rebuild. Oh man. Oh, we got some loose change. Sweet. Oh man. The future of this Shink is so bright, I gotta wear shades. Well, I'm unsure of the mileage. I'd have to double check my paperwork, but until I get a battery in this thing and actually turn the key, I have no idea how many miles are on this thing. We'll just have to see what happens. So the next step for me is going to be to pop the hood and see if I can manually turn the engine over. I'm probably gonna pull the spark plugs out to see if any coolant comes out of there, because I suspect the coolant seals went bad in this thing. I'm not 100% sure, but apparently that's a common problem with the RX-8s. So we're gonna pop the hood, probably pull a bunch of plastic out, and see if we can turn the motor over. Ah, yes, plastic. So the first thing I need to do is remove all of this plastic stuff so I can gain access to what I need to, both to turn the motor over and to pull the spark plugs. But you know, there's this tiny part of me that wants to just put a battery into it and see if it'll crank over. Spider webs. Now, this particular battery was meant for a battery relocation project in the black car, but I have it in here, so why not connect it, see if I can turn this thing over and see what we see. Maybe I should open the garage door just in case it does fire up. Oh man. We have a fuel leak. That's no good. Well, I have no idea where the fuel leak's coming from. I'm guessing this coupler right here. There's a couple of aftermarket hose clamps there. I'm gonna have to turn the ignition back on and see if I can pressurize the line and see exactly where it's coming from. Oh my gosh. It's coming out from everywhere. There's like 7 pinholes in this hose right here. Man, I wonder if this thing just lost fuel pressure and compression's fine. Who knows? So I guess for now, we are just fixing the fuel leak. That's the next step. Let's see if I can't get a better shot of where this fuel's coming from. It's coming out of there like the fountain of youth. It's all over the place. So first things first, we're gonna replace this line right here so this car doesn't catch on fire if in fact it did start up, and see if we can fix the fuel leak. Okay, I've got the hose clamps loose. Let's see if we can wiggle this guy off. Probably not. Schmar. Well, looks like this is gonna be a bear. Say hello to my little friend. There we go. There's the culprit. As you can see, this line was completely dry rotted out, and because it was bent on the upper side, it created a little bit of a weak point right here, and it just developed some pinholes in the top. So I'm gonna replace it with some pressure fuel hose, get a couple clamps on there, and then turn it back on and double check for leaks. Okay, we have our new fuel line in. I did cut this a little bit longer so that I could arch this out a little bit and not have a stress point where it would pinch the hose. Hopefully we won't have any fuel leaks. Let's turn the ignition on and see what happens. I just saw a spritz. Okay, so the bottom side is definitely bad as well. It is coming out of the bottom side of that hose also. So we're gonna have to replace that entire line. Being that there was a union in the line to begin with, I'm guessing that that line went bad at some point, and they, instead of taking off the upper intake manifold and going the whole way down underneath, someone cut the line, put the union in, replaced the bad part, and now the other portion of the line has gone bad. For right now, I think what I'm gonna try and do is cut the bad part off on the lower side and then jam that union down, reclamp it, see if I can get it together without any leaks, because just for right now, I need to have this thing not leaking fuel so that I can crank it over and see if I can maybe get it to fire. So before I go any further, my leak's coming out right around here, so I'm gonna cut this line right about there. Hopefully I can get past that bad part of the line, reconnect it, and not have any leaks, and try to crank this thing over. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I'm probably gonna reposition the camera so that I can see down there, review any footage, and just double check and make sure that this thing's not leaking. All right, ignition on, no leaks. Sweet. Dare I crank it over? Boy, wouldn't it be neat if this thing cranked up and fired up. Well, no such luck just yet. So maybe we'll pull out some spark plugs, see what's going on, see if they're wet, see if coolant flops out of there, who knows. We'll see what happens. Well, by the looks of things, it's probably going to be easier to get to the spark plugs and the spark plug wires from underneath. So I'm going to get this thing up on jack stands to make that process a little bit easier. And in the interim, before I do any of that, I'm probably going to pull the fuel pump fuse and then crank this thing over just in the off chance that it was flooded before, and maybe I can clear out those combustion chambers and see if I can get it to fire or pop or whatever. Okay, fuel pump, fuel pump, fuel pump. Fuel pump, 20 amp, right here. So I'm gonna pull that guy. That way the fuel pump won't run, won't pressurize the lines, won't be injecting any fuel, and if the combustion chambers are flooded, I'll be able to crank it over, and if it clears out, it might fire. We'll just have to see what happens. Come to think of it, if it was a coolant seal, it would probably be low in coolant. I haven't checked the coolant yet either. Well, the reserve tank is empty. This is not a good sign. But I'm gonna try the fuel pump thing anyway. Round 3, fight. Well, it looks like we're a no-go there, so I'm gonna just put this guy back in there and get this thing up on stands and pull the spark plugs out. Well, considering that I'm a little impatient when it comes to figuring out what's going on with this thing, I decided to weasel my arm down in here and remove the trailing plug on the front rotor, if I can get it out of there, and then we can take a look at it. And maybe I can get to the trailing plug on the rear rotor as well. We'll just have to see what happens. Okay, well, we're dry, which is good. Hopefully the back one will be dry too. Let's see. After getting this thing up on jack stands and taking a look through the wheel well, I discovered that if you remove the tire that we just repaired and wheel, that in through this hole right here, you can gain access to the spark plug wires and spark plugs. So that's where I'm gonna go through to get to those, make things a little bit easier on myself. It's gonna be a little bit easier for me to remove the leading plug on the rear rotor, which is on the lower side. So that's the one I'm gonna take out on the rear rotor. I got it loose. Let's hope that this guy isn't wet. And it doesn't appear to be wet. This is very strange. I'm gonna take a closer look here. That's very strange. Since the spark plugs weren't wet with coolant, I can only assume that the coolant seal is still intact and that coolant hasn't flooded into the engine. So my next step is going to be to pull the fuel pump fuse and the ignition relay and turn this thing over and see whether or not I can get coolant or anything to come out of the engine. And if it is flooded, I'll be able to clear all of that through the spark plug holes from turning the engine over. So let's give that a shot. Well, if I pull the ignition relay out, the anti-theft kicks in, and therefore I can't crank it over to do all of that. So at this point, I'm gonna leave the fuel pump fuse out, put the ignition relay back in, and disconnect the coil so that I don't get spark, because if I do have a spark or an arc somewhere, that means that it could catch on fire, and I really don't want to do that today. So I found that pulling the ignition relay won't work, but the coils are under the engine fuse, which is a 15 amp fuse. It's the third one down right here. I also found out why the power windows weren't working, because the 20 amp fuse is missing for those. So I'm gonna pull out the engine one, hopefully I can crank this thing over. I won't get any spark, clear the combustion chambers, see what we've got. Well, that didn't work either. So I'm just gonna put that guy back in, and I'm going to disconnect the coil packs individually. Man, it just reeks of gasoline in here. Well, it sounds like we turned it over and we found that it has compression of some sort. I'll probably have to hook up the compression tester to it to really see what's going on and go from there. Let's see what happens. Now, if you're doing work on a rotary and you want to compression test it, you can use a conventional one, blah, blah, blah. If you're doing any sort of work on a rotary and you want a good, accurate compression reading, you need to get a rotary compression tester. You can go to rotarycompressiontester.com to pick one up. Well worth it if you're going to be doing any sort of work on a rotary, in my humble opinion. So got the sensor hooked up. Now I am going to be doing one on the trailing and one on the leading. They're usually within a couple PSI of one another. I just want to check and see if this thing actually has compression on all sides of each face of the rotor. So that's what we're going to do. Here are our readings for the rear rotor. Doesn't look very good. 56, 45, 42, corrected 53, 43, 40. So that's not very good at all. I was kind of hoping that we'd be, in the 80s or thereabouts. Let's try the front rotor and see what we've got. All right, everyone, I couldn't even get it to read, which means the front rotor has no compression, which means it's time for an overhaul. What can you do? Time to disassemble and break it apart and see what really happened. I'm hoping that I can manually turn the engine over and take a look at the apex seals through the spark plug holes to see if maybe that's the problem. Who knows what we're gonna get into, but it just became a project. And for those wondering, it has 102,906 miles on it, so it wouldn't surprise me if this thing's due for a refresh. On the plus side of things, I didn't see any coolant or anything weird come out of the spark plug holes, so that tells me that maybe the coolant jacket seals are still good and I don't have any real rust or corrosion or anything too crazy inside the rotor housings. On a silver lining note, I got a sticker. That guy's going on the refrigerator. So here's a look at the front rotor. You can see that I've put the trailing plug back in and removed the leading plug so that there's just a little bit of a bigger hole there. And I've rotated the engine by hand so that I can see the first apex seal on the front rotor. It looks to be intact. I'm going to rotate the others and just look at the other two just to see if they're there and intact. And hopefully they're all there. Well, the first two apex seals were intact, and if I was the crocodile hunter, I would say, we've got some bad news, because there's no apex seal there at all. It is just completely MIA, which means complete teardown, rebuild, apex seal, who knows what else. Considering the apex seal left the chat, we're looking at a complete rebuild. I'm hoping that it didn't come apart and just completely ruin the rotor housings and the rotor, and that I'll be able to reuse those parts. Chances are probably kind of slim at this point that I'll be able to reuse those parts, but I won't be able to tell until I pull the motor out of this thing and disassemble it and see what's reparable and what's not. On another note, it is my goal to get this thing at least out of the car, diagnosed, see if it's reparable, and potentially rebuild the engine, get it back in and get this thing running, hopefully by the end of October. It might be an unrealistic goal considering work and life and all that other stuff, but that's kind of my goal, is to have this thing out of here by the beginning of November so that I can do other things. And we'll just have to see what happens and get this motor yanked out of here and go from there. If you're enjoying the videos, please consider liking and subscribing and supporting the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Well, I had to find a silver lining somewhere. At least I got this cool sticker I can put on my fridge.